Let's bring in our panel early. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for the Washington Times, Leslie Marshall, Democratic strategist, and Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com, host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. Guy, I want to start with our lead story, and that was this Jillian Turner story about looking into these documents that were released today. One is there are things that we fill in some holes about some of the things about the suspicions about the Steele dossier, about being upset about false statements to the FISA court. But in the big picture, what do you make of this and why it's coming out now?
Well, there are so many documents and people are poring over them as we speak to mine any nuggets of news that might be lying within that huge stack of paper. What I'm most interested in, Brett, on this whole front, and Jillian made mention of the Durham investigation, which is still very much active, is our understanding. He's going to be the one who can really synthesize what matters, not just in these declassified documents, but what he's discovered in the course of his investigation. He's got a large team, and they've really been moving for quite some time with interviews, subpoena power, so on and so forth. So I think the real understanding, the best understanding we're going to have about what happened at the onset of this investigation will be when the Durham probe concludes, and hopefully we will get some sort of serious document or report from John Durham that will augment everything we know from the IG, the Inspector General, and then from these declassified documents here today.
Yeah, it's important to remember that that has not wrapped up. A criminal investigation. I asked the FBI director, Christopher Wray, about this when I interviewed him in the summer. Just take a little listen.
On the Crossfire hurricane matter, that's the subject of the IG report, I think it describes conduct that is unacceptable, period, full stop, and cannot be allowed to happen and will not be allowed to happen.
But whether it's criminal or not.
Criminal decisions, charging decisions, prosecution decisions are not made by the FBI director. Those are made by across the street at the Justice Department by the prosecutors.
But somebody here altered that FISA report, and that would be a criminal offense, right?
And that individual no longer works at the FBI, and I don't want to get out in front of the Durham investigation.
Charlie, I guess there's just a lot of people who listen to investigations in Washington thinking that something's going to happen at the end, and then nothing happens. And is this going to be another one of those investigations, do we think?
Yeah, no, and of course that's the big question because, of course, a lot of the questions, about that investigation and the entire probe into the Trump campaign and then the Trump presidency, a lot of those fingerprints go all the way up to the president, the previous president, and go to the vice president, who is now the incoming president. So there are lots of questions about whether or not we will actually get to the bottom of that, and hopefully we will, because obviously these are very, very important things that need to be exposed. But what's interesting is that, although there's a lot of new stuff that's going to come out with these documents, I'm sure, the big picture we already know, and that is that the previous administration launched what appears to be an unprecedented espionage campaign against political opponents at the height of a national election, and they continued that investigation into the sitting president after he was sworn in. And fast forward to today, and a lot of people think that President Trump has acted unreasonably in his questions about the outcome of the 2020 election. But I have always sort of been kind of marveled at the fact that it had to have been like a hall of mirrors for him with all of this stuff that comes out about these unjust, dishonest investigations into him. No wonder he had questions about the outcome of the 2020 election. And no wonder he went to such extraordinary measures to try to get to the bottom of it and to combat all of it. It's because of everything that was put into place, against his campaign and then against his presidency from day one. And I find it kind of hard to blame him for being so suspicious of everyone in Washington.
Well, Leslie, obviously there's two parts of that. There's what the president said about the election and being stolen and what he said in the National Mall. And then there's all that he faced in the Trump administration since the beginning. Speaking of, well, first of all, two parts. One is, does Joe Biden allow all of this to go forward? Can he affect the Durham investigation? Obviously, you also have the Hunter Biden investigation. He said publicly that his Justice Department will operate outside of him as president.
And I believe that he is telling the truth. The reason I believe that is, look, you know, he wants these investigations to play out so that we can have full transparency and get to the bottom of things. I don't think he's going to interfere or say anything about it. And for a few reasons, Brett, you know, and they are COVID, a vaccine, and the economy. And those are numbers 1, 2, and 3 that the president-elect has spoken about. That is his biggest task. And quite frankly, you had asked the timing when you went to Guy at the beginning of the segment. And you know, that's what bothers me as a Democrat. Really, we're talking about unity. We look at what happened in our country in D.C. on January 6th. We have a new president coming in, and let's dump documents that have to do with an administration prior, even though Joe Biden was vice president at the time, before he becomes president. And this is not, even though it's important to people inside the Beltway, for most Americans, it's where's my vaccine, where's my check, and when can I get my life back?
Fair point. Guy, let me put up the Pew poll on the president's job approval ratings. First, overall, the job approval as he's seen, and you can see the dip down there, down to 29%, according to Pew Research Center. And if you look at the second one, the approval among Republicans, a high of 85, now dropping to below 60. A lot has transpired in the last week and a half.
Yeah, and it's been pretty horrifying to a lot of people. So if you look at the overall job approval numbers, they've cratered for reasons that I think should be obvious. And you have to wonder if the president had simply conceded the election and touted his many accomplishments over the last 4 years in the post-election period, I think things would be looking very different in terms of his numbers leaving office and perhaps his trajectory towards 2024, if that's something that he's thinking about doing. He has certainly sullied those chances to a large extent. Never say never, of course. The numbers among Republicans are interesting to me, Brett, because there are a lot of anti-Trump people in the party sort of high-fiving and saying, aha, finally, we're being vindicated. Look at this. People are abandoning him. Even in this very bad poll, however, 6 out of 10 Republicans support the president, approve of what he's doing. And I think if the campaign were to start for 4 years from now, today, he would be the front runner still. So I think people need to sort of slow their roll and recognize there's going to be a need to fuse anti-Trump and the huge amount of pro-Trump people if this party's going to have a chance of winning 2 years from now, 4 years from now.
I know Charlie has a lot of thoughts about this, but I've got to run. We're going to have Frank Luntz at the bottom of the hour, and there's some interesting stuff he's got new from Trump supporters.